Throughout history, there have been many significant changes that qualify as tipping point moments. Tipping points are moments in history when the future of the world is drastically changed off of its original course due to an innovation, action, etc. Some of these tipping points include the mastery of fire, the Industrial Revolution, and World War I. These three events influenced the world in a completely new and dynamic manner. They completely changed the balance of the political and economic scales by introducing new aspects. Hey boss, can we take a break? What do you say?
Are you kidding me? We just started.
What? Come on, please.
Fine.
Hey Larry, you want to hear some history jokes?
Sure, man. Hit me up with some.
Alright, what did the Russians say during World War I?
I don't know, man. What did it say?
There is no time for Stalin when you're Russian to industrialize.
Oh, you're on fire, dude.
Yeah.
I got one for it. Why were the early days of history called the Dark Ages?
I don't know, why?
Because there are so many nights.
Oh! Alright, I got one more. I'll top that one, alright? How do you cut the Roman Empire in half?
I don't know, man. How do you?
With a pair of Caesars. AP World History looks into these tipping points and analyzes them by comparing, contrasting, and evaluating the changes and continuities that existed during these time periods. Throughout these analyzations, historians can make use of AP World concepts to make educated predictions that follow prior trends throughout history. What do they say? History repeats itself.
The mastery of fire is a critical tipping point, for it structured and created a foundation for the world we live in today. Imagine if fire wasn't discovered at all until now. We couldn't possibly see through the darkness. Fire was accidentally discovered by the first men and women 400,000 years ago. By striking two stones against each other and creating sparks that lighted some dry leaves, they discovered fire. From then on, men have used fire to light their path along rivers and villages throughout the night, and eventually lighting their own homes. Fire was also used for cooking food, and making it much more edible and tasty. Fire also made them warm through the wintertime, even if they were virtually outside, either in the woods or in the desert. The circumstances that led to the discovery are quite controversial. The true point of the discovery of fire is not exactly known, but most believe it to be a simple discovery caused by witnessing lightning, as well as it being a simple accident when striking two stones. The increase in humans' intellect also contributed to the discovery of fire, as they could now reason and rationalize with what actions they took. Furthermore, to increase health benefits, cooked food was needed, and fire served as a method to cook it. There were also many issues resolved in result of the mastery of fire. As discussed previously, the use of fire improved and resolved many of the current issues revolving around that time period. Primarily, malnutrition decreased among the people as fire served as a method of cooking raw food. Additionally, workers could work during the nighttime as fire served as a source of light. Finally, fire served as a protection from other tribes as well as animals as it scared threats away. One of the main and direct effects of the harnessing of fire is population growth. This is because as people had access to more cooked food and better nutrition, it was much easier to produce healthier offspring that would live much longer than before. This also led to the making of nomadic and pastoral communities, which would eventually turn into settled societies.
Another critical tipping point was the Industrial Revolution, as it was one of the most significant turning points during the 19th and 20th centuries. The introduction of many new ideas and innovation spurs the growth of many new civilizations around the globe. Additionally, with these new inventions, such as the cotton gin and the steam engine, Britain became a major technologically advanced center of production and commerces. Their standings in the global economy also grew in strength. Lastly, the Industrial Revolution gave rise to an increased demand for crops in agriculture. This allowed the population of many nations to expand rapidly. There were many causes that led to the Industrial Revolution. It began to change England and subsequently the rest of Europe into the modern world we live in today, beginning in the late 18th century and the early 19th century. This is when different means of transportation began to develop, such as the canal. Canals were very functional at the way as they provided an inexpensive mean to connect landlocked regions to the sea where trade could occur. This growth in infrastructure allowed for improved connections from one place to another where they previously isolated from each other. The Embargo Act of 1807 and the War of 1812 were the springboard for the Industrial Revolution as well. The Embargo Act of 1807 forced the U.S. to manufacture their own goods because they would not be able to trade for foreign goods. The War of 1812 revealed the necessity for a better transportation system, economic independence, and independent markets. An ample amount of issues were also solved and resolved of the revolution, the main one being that machines could now take over people's jobs. Although this did pose a threat later on in the revolution, it initially was a miracle. It was a drastic change in the economy as now methods of production were strengthened by a large factor. Furthermore, numerous people did not have to endure the suffering when working at a factory, such as the wages and the working conditions. The increased amount of goods also led to the resolving of social issues, as the standard of living. The standard of living in industrial countries grew higher in result of the increased production in the new factories. Women and children also now had a chance to now enter the workforce to earn money for their families. Additionally, political issues were also resolved as women finally received the right to vote and the capitalist industrial class finally replaced the landowning aristocrats. As the revolution progressed, there were many effects. One of the most significant results of the Industrial Revolution was the emergence of the middle class. As goods became cheaper, more people could buy more of the good. They could buy everything they needed and would still have some money left over. As mentioned previously, production increased exponentially. More factories were built as efficient machines were invented. With machines that could mass produce and a plethora of workers, factories could now produce much more than they could have before. Transportation and communication were drastically changed as well. Transporting goods, which used to take weeks, even months, now took days with steamboats, roads, canals, and railroads. Communication you could easily do instantly. Everything took place at a faster pace. Lastly, as technology increased the efficiency of farming, farmers could now yield more crops than ever before.
World War I was the first global conflict in the history of mankind. World War I was a critical turning point in history because of the tilting of power balance in Europe. With the conclusion of World War I, former world powerhouses, such as Germany and Russia, collapsed and the United States rose as a global contender in world affairs. World War I escalated as a result of 5 concepts put together into an acronym called MAINS. M stands for militarism, which arose from each country attempting to rapidly industrialize and maintain dominance over other countries. Most governments were strongly influenced by military leaders. A stands for alliances. The 2 major alliance groups that existed during the time of World War I were the Central Powers, which consisted of Austria-Hungary, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire, and the Allied Powers, Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, and later the United States. The 2 alliances were pitted against each other at the start of the World War. The I stands for imperialism. Each country sought to expand its colonial territories into other countries' territories. N stands for nationalism. The Central Powers developed nationalistic views towards their leaders, and the Allied Powers responded in turn. Lastly, S stands for the Serbian assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the starting event for World War I. World War I did not end up solving many issues. With the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was held responsible for the war, arguably inciting World War II. However, certain corrupt regimes were removed from power. The effects of World War I were felt for decades. A new form of warfare had been introduced, the chemical and trench warfare that were so bloody. The Central Power empires also collapsed during this time. A League of Nations was established, and of course, the start of the Second World War was also a direct result of the Treaty of Versailles of World War I.